And they're like, yeah, like I've used ChatGPT a year ago. It was cool. I don't really know where we go from here. It's like, well, no. Like the last year has been a year you probably don't want to miss.
So, welcome, Mike. I'm joined by Mike Kaput in this. How do I say your last name? Sorry, I should have checked.
Kaput, yeah, just like
cool.
the word. Yep.
Sorry, I should have checked that before we hit record. And you're joining me this week to talk all about content and AI because of your role as Chief Content Officer at Marketing AI Institute, and you're the co-author of Marketing Artificial Intelligence and co-host of the AI Show podcast. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me, Paul.
So, talk us through your setup at that end. If you're watching on video, you can see it's.
Well, we're back in the office quite a bit more these days, which we're all very happy about. Actually, we've been.
And where's that?
We're in Cleveland, Ohio. Actually,
Cool.
So I've got a nice view of the city behind or in front of me at this stage of our baseball stadium. So yeah, we have a nice little office downtown that we've been going back into more and more as we've kind of hired new people. So I'm in one of our kind of conference / recording, informal recording studios here at the office, and just headphones, mic, and our nice little Riverside setup here.
Nice. I've moved out into the open office today.
Yeah.
There's nobody in. The sun's out. It's Friday. In the UK, we finish early on a Friday, and the sun's out. So, yeah, there's only me in this afternoon. So I thought, I'll just do it here. So
I love that.
Normally I'm locked in a little room like you're doing.
Yeah.
Baseball stadiums, right?
Yes.
I love baseball stadiums. The shape, the steep stands,
It's so cool because you can't obviously see it from here, but we can almost see right into it. So if there was a game going on right now, we often forget, like every time someone hits a home run, they shoot off fireworks, which sound like they're right there. So it's always
they are.
it's exciting because it feels like a lot of energy, a lot of dynamism, but also if you're on a call, you got to be like, oh, they just scored. I'm going to mute for a second. But it's a little too early here for a game right now.
Who's the team and how good are they?
The Cleveland Guardians, they're okay. I don't follow baseball super closely, but we're not as bad as our football team has been. So I think I think it's a good time to be a baseball or a basketball fan in Cleveland. Football is a little iffier.
Yeah, well, I know a little bit about NFL, so yeah, I know where you're coming from. And I play the original version of baseball, cricket. So
yes, nice.
Yeah, so I do like baseball. Was lucky to go once when we were in Boston. So you're obviously going to be talking about content and AI. This is part of an ongoing series, really. We're looking at AI in marketing and inbound marketing, inbound sales and customer service. And we're talking about it in a way of like using technology and doing inbound in the Industry 4.0 world. And the first topic to discuss with you is understanding the evolution of AI in marketing. Obviously, we all know ChatGPT exploded into the mainstream, but AI has been around in other industries in the past. We've all been using it unknowingly. Wasn't called AI when we were using features on our laptop and things like that. Why has it suddenly become so popular apart from ChatGPT? Because there were other tools. What do you think's made it so prevalent?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think there's a few, or at least a couple factors maybe coming together. So like you said, we've absolutely had, AI as a field of study has been around for 70, 80 years, at least in theory, since way back in the 50s. So the term artificial intelligence was coined sometime, I think like maybe the mid 50s. So we obviously didn't have anything resembling the systems we have today back then. But in theory, there's always been this idea that, okay, maybe using some configuration of machines, we can start, quote unquote, simulating how humans go through thought patterns and reach conclusions, right? So, but even in our lifetimes in the last 2-3 decades, there have been forms of artificial intelligence, and most of them have been, as far as I can tell, on the consumer side and for businesses, predictive, right? You feed in a bunch of data, it applies some type of machine learning algorithms or other types of statistical methods to hopefully use historical data to make future predictions with some degree of accuracy. Now, not always the best accuracy in the world, but that's what we're trying to do. So a good example of this is, for 2 decades, we've been using AI in the form of Amazon product recommendations. This has been AI since before anyone was talking about AI in marketing. The big shift, and ChatGPT is the thing that kind of catalyzed this, has been, I think, generative AI. So anytime we talk about AI let's say, 2022 or so, you're almost certainly dealing with some type of predictive AI. Nothing wrong with that. It can be super powerful. But it was much harder to deploy, much harder to actually use within businesses, and especially for consumers, unless it was baked into something like Amazon. So even though you were using it a lot, I don't think you were really thinking about using it. And now that we have this whole generative AI,
just called it the algorithms.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. And honestly, if you go back, I wonder how much of our references to algorithms were just, what we would just call AI now. Exactly.
I was at an event last week, and it was hosted by Andrew Beldine. He was actually long career at Microsoft. He shared that he was the guy. Do you remember the Microsoft Clippy? The little, he's the guy who wrote that.
No kidding.
And he was talking about how a lot of the things we call AI aren't AI. They're just automation.
Yes.
So it's funny, like years ago we were calling AI algorithm, and now we're calling automation AI.
Yeah, we're seeing the next phase of that, where a lot of people are trying to call automation or other forms of AI agents right now, So the cycle continues, for better or for worse.
Tell you what, let's jump into that then, because we've just recorded a podcast about some big releases recently from HubSpot. We're a HubSpot partner. I don't know how familiar you are with the platform.
Yeah, we run on HubSpot. So while I'm, very, very familiar with it, I'm not as familiar with all the, say, sales and customer service applications, because I'm not in that day in, day out, but our entire company runs on HubSpot.
Content agent then. So that's one we know. It's one I always hark back to with my background as well. But so talk me through then this agent setup, because there's...
Yeah, I guess at a high level, at least today, I think the thing we kind of talk a lot about with marketers is, AI agents are absolutely a thing. There are AI agents out there that are starting to be really interesting, really impressive, but there's also a lot of confusion because everyone is trying to put the label agent on stuff that often looks a little more like automation. Now, there's nothing wrong with automation, but if it's following like a workflow of a series of steps that are mostly predefined by a human or using kind of basic conversational AI, there's nothing wrong with any of that. But I would say where we're starting to see really true agentic stuff is in like OpenAI and Google's deep research tool. O3, the new AI model from OpenAI, is also somewhat agentic in the sense of being able to start deciding on its own which steps to take and then go taking those steps. Obviously, OpenAI has Operator too, which is will go use a web browser for you. That's really where I would see us going with AI agents. And all of these tools, for anyone that's used them, they're incredible. They're very, very cool. You can get a lot of value out of them, but it's still so early. So I'm always a little skeptical if someone says, hey, we have an AI agent that does A, B, or C for you all together without you doing anything in marketing. I'm not entirely sold we're there yet, but this moves so fast, we very well could be soon.
Where are people's heads at when you speak to, either not just your colleagues, but you speak to people outside of our bubble, outside of like the digital marketing bubble even, never mind the AI adoption bubble?
It's, it continually amazes me personally because I think it's really hard for one to get out of any of these bubbles because I tend to think like I'm behind all the time, reading about all this stuff and trying to work in this space. But when you talk to your average person, even your average, very savvy, business leader, everyone is talking about and hearing about AI, but it's still so early in terms of what they actually think those terms mean, terms around AI agents, in terms of what they think these things are capable of. That's often a big thing I see is like when the ChatGPT moment hit, obviously everyone's reaching out, talking about AI. Your average person who had no interest in this stuff, it's on their radar. But then you talk to them today and they're like, yeah, like I've used ChatGPT a year ago. It was cool. I don't really know where we go from here. It's like, well, no. Like the last year has been a year you probably don't want to miss in AI with how far things have come. So I think that really is where I find the majority of people outside our bubble is they are now aware of it. A few are really getting uh, forward thinking about it, but the vast majority understand it might be important, but are a little scared of it, a little too busy to figure out how to adopt it. And also, primarily, just don't really truly understand how far we've come in the last 12 to 18 months.
Yeah. Yeah. I was in an office recently and the IT guy came, the third party IT guy came to get a printer onto the Wi-Fi or whatever he was doing, I don't know. And he mentioned on his way out when he saw somebody's email screen, said, "Oh, by the way, yeah, you know that is it Windows 10 is being sunsetted in September, and
Yeah, right.
you'll
Yeah.
need to move then." And it was like, okay, this is where he's their IT provider, and that's where a lot of people's heads are at in terms of just adoption, awareness, and education. But then it's weird, isn't it? Because at the same time, we're getting AI overviews forced onto us when we
Right.
Siri intelligence, and it's a real. How do you see that sort of paradox that's happening?
Well, this is such a cliche quote at this point, but as a big sci-fi fan, the sci-fi author William Gibson said something to the effect of the future's already here, it's just not evenly distributed.
Mm,
And like he said that 30, 40 years ago, mostly in relation to the internet. I feel the exact same way about AI. Like it depends, especially even I go into industry events and do talks, and like you could have someone in that room that literally has done more 10x more than I ever will with AI. You could have someone that doesn't even know what the term means. It's so
yeah,
different how, and the industry as a whole is moving much faster, much forward, much more. Like we're making really good progress in my opinion. But your individual business person, business leader, whether in marketing or not, it is a total toss up where they might be today.
I was amazed. I was amazed at somebody I arrived at the event with last week, talking in the lift in the elevator, and bit introduced themselves. Not sure. I've got my head around it. I'm struggling to find the time to get to know how to use it properly and that kind of thing. Then we had the talk with the guy I mentioned, and he talked about Google and I think Amazon as well, building nuclear power plants to power their data centers. Data centers as big as the second biggest city in the UK. And then on the way out, I was like, "How did you find it?" And she's like, "Nah, I just can't see it really catching on." I'm like, "You've literally just heard about them building nuclear reactors to nuclear power plants to, yeah." It's just like there's a resistance. There's people who have gone full steam ahead and are using it too much. So that takes us on to the next topic. So if beyond ChatGPT and proofreading my emails and helping me take notes in a meeting, these are quite common tools. What, apart from generative AI and note takers and things, what are other things that people could be exploring that are pretty easy use cases that they can go and implement that you think of from a marketing AI?
Yeah, so I'll focus in on one or two that I think are extremely high ROI if you're not really going down the rabbit hole with them. And the biggest one would be, I guess, for lack of a scientific term here, AI as a strategic assistant. So we see a lot of people are really rushing forward in a great way with all sorts of use cases for AI in marketing, doing all these one off things that they do as part of their job, getting better at doing them, producing better work. Where AI is really starting to shine for us, especially, is acting as an in real time as a thought partner. So we will literally fire up, especially with how good some of the recent models have gotten, like something like O3 will be fired up on a screen during a meeting, and we will be actively not only recording what we're saying and using that material in different ways later with the model, but also we'll be working in real time with the model to game out different strategic scenarios, figure out answers to really tough questions, and figure out very high level topics and approaches in our business and in our marketing. So to make that really tangible, I think every single person out there would be really well benefited by spending, and it would take you 10 minutes probably, spin up just a custom GPT that acts as your co-pilot in your role. So as an example, I have a co
Sorry, Mike, an education point of view though, like that sounds really complex.
That's fair. And I would encourage you to fire up custom GPTs and see very quickly how not complex it is. Because, yeah, that's a good point. Because we do use the language, go build a GPT, right? That's typically how you'd refer to it. But really, what I'm talking about is you're opening a window, describing in natural language or with a pre created prompt that you've just written out what you would like a custom version of ChatGPT to do. You copy and paste that into a window, you hit save, you grab the link, you start playing around with it, and you make tweaks to it. So it is tempting to start thinking like, oh my gosh, this is going to be so hard to do. Trust me, I am not a programmer. I'm not someone that's like building AI from scratch here. You can go build a custom GPT as long as you know how to type. So given that, I would say, like for instance, I have a GPT that's a co-chief content officer GPT. All it is it's basically been prompted with a few paragraphs to say like, here's what I need you to do. You need to be a strategic partner to me. Here are very top line KPIs I'm responsible for. Here's my job description. Let's go. That's pasted into a custom GPT. It's saved, so I never have to copy and paste the prompt in again. And then that is on my bookmark bar here, ready to help anytime I need help. You can do this for any use case you have, but I think one for your overall job is really, really helpful. Or using something like one of the more robust reasoning models, again, like O3, Gemini 2.5 Pro, with prompts to say, okay, we're not just going to go write email copy. We're not just going to go brainstorm headlines. Here, I need to think about this quarter. I need to think about this year. I need to think about high level strategy. Let's work together on that for the next few hours.
Obviously it's a rough estimate, but what's the sort of blocker, do you think, for people to move away from just doing point solutions like landing page copy or headline drafting or proofreading my emails to switch into that strategic mindset?
Yeah, that's a really good question. It's something I don't have a perfect answer to because I think we're still trying to figure it out. But I think at a very high level, first they have to be aware of what's possible in the first place. So whether so many people don't even get to the landing page copy phase, right? They don't even know, how do I prompt this effectively to get really good output? So there's that. That's a whole other scenario, right? Where people don't even know how to get really good structured outputs from these tools for something very simple. So simply awareness of how to do that, what these tools can do. And then I do think you need to see what you like, know what you don't know, right? Because so many of these people sitting here might not realize that you can go have a 2-hour conversation with a reasoning model at a very high strategic level and get outputs that are as good as someone with 10, 20 years of experience. So like, you have to understand that's even possible in the first place. So obviously listening to conversations like this is really helpful, like getting different perspectives. So I always try in what we do, where I can, to show as much as I tell. Like just show people, and especially on like LinkedIn where I post a fair amount, like I just try to say like, hey, here's a workflow I've used that's really helpful. You might want to explore it. It's just giving people as many ideas as possible, because then from there, you kind of just want to take that and run with it on your own and start experimenting in the context of your own work with how to get the best results.
Imagine if somebody is, like you say, listening to conversations like this. They're obviously wanting to learn. They're obviously trying to improve themselves. That's the whole point of the podcast. That's why we get people like yourself on, to pass on that knowledge. So they're probably then internally at their company, at least, especially if they're in-house, at the forefront of adopting these technologies. So let's talk about managing that change into the business, and going from, you might be spearheading this usage or learning it for yourself because you can see the opportunity for improvements and efficiencies. But how do you get company-wide adoption? How can you effectively communicate, perhaps as a leader, the value? And I've stopped myself saying the word urgency because you can get tricked into it being like, it's taking our jobs. There'll be no marketing roles left in a year, but there will. But, another classic quote already is just, AI won't replace your job. Somebody using AI will. So how do people, or how do you help people adopt this change?
Yeah, it's a complex topic. We've literally got entire courses on this at Marketing AI Institute. But I will say where we start and where you need to really heavily invest, we would argue, and that people don't do enough, is the concept of company wide AI literacy. So, what I mean by that is, again, kind of back to the future is here, it's unevenly distributed. There's very likely, especially at a big company, we work with a ton of them, there's very likely some people who are really at the forefront of AI. There's likely a lot of people that have no idea that your company is doing anything with AI and don't know what they're supposed to be doing. And then there's also probably a huge amount of people that are afraid of it or don't understand it or want nothing to do with it. Everyone everywhere in the company is at these different phases. So we always start with the first and most important step is general AI literacy. This cannot just be a handful of executives who are really keen on AI pushing just from the top down. That's important. But it also has to be bottom up in terms of people actually understanding, no matter what their role is, what their seniority is, what their function is, what AI is, what it means for their particular role, and how they can quickly and easily and in a responsible way within the company's policies get started with the technology. That's not the whole ball game, but that is like the price of admission, I would say. Because if you try to do all the other stuff like forming AI councils, creating AI policies, getting the best, shiniest technology, that's all great. Building AI roadmaps and strategies, fantastic. But if at the end of the day, 85% of your company still has no idea how they're actually supposed to be using these tools or how they're relevant to their job, if they don't know how to do it for themselves at least a little bit, you are going to run into enormous problems.
Very true. Have you any examples of companies you've helped successfully transition?
Yeah, I can't mention names, but I can give an example of a recent very large enterprise we worked with. It was like, this is a very small but powerful example. They have for years purchased AI technology. They have done work with us, with others on forming long-term AI plans. All of this stuff was great. They've done educational workshops. They've attended events. They've bought courses. This is still all very fantastic. But one of the most impactful things we also helped them with was taking a small team that had access to all those resources and tools and weren't getting as much value as they could out of them and sitting down and saying, we did a very small pilot with building GPTs. We said, look, you have all these other resources, you have all this other AI education to do, that's great. But how about we show you how to use GPTs in your own job, how to build them for yourself. Here's a few examples we built after talking with your leaders about what's most important to get done. And then we just turned them loose for a couple months. Gave them training on how to do it, but it's nothing super expensive. And it was night and day. Like people who previously were like, yeah, we've kind of dabbled with AI or like we're not really doing what we should be doing with it. Night and day were now super excited about it. They were building their own tools. They were capturing pretty significant efficiency and performance gains because they knew that they know their job better than I do, better than any of us do, better than a vendor does. So we gave them the tools to be able to solve their own problems. And so that kind of ground up approach, again, it's not the only piece of it. All the other infrastructure needed to be in place. But the ground up approach had incredible results at the individual level for
How
these
did you
people.
measure it? What were the results?
So we actually sent out surveys about what they're using it for, how, what, if they had to, it always gets a bit subjective because you have to ask like, hey, can you quantify some of the benefits here? And, it wasn't all just hours saved though. That was a significant amount. There were more than one person who was saving easily a dozen hours a month, if not more, on certain tasks, which was good. Well, some of them had quite a bit
Some
more.
of it's qualitative then,
A
or
lot
perhaps
of
the
the
NPS data,
Well,
or
I think qualitative is really important because on this survey, for instance, and this was totally unprompted, it simply asked, like, can you share with us some of the benefits, if any, of the GPTs you built? Some of the qualitative responses I think would be really valuable for people teaching and selling AI technology to understand. They were comments like, I'm so relieved because this is work that now I don't have to do on a weekend that I typically used to have to do. Someone literally said, I am geeked out exploring what's possible here. I have like a creative spark in my work again. Like these are intangible, surely, but deeply important to how to get people actually bought into AI and like making it relevant to them, giving them the tools to help themselves, I think was key here.
What did they do differently? Was it the bottom up approach?
Yeah, I think it was just simply focusing on one thing instead of this big picture. AI is going to change everything. Here's how you need to reinvent and transform your career. Again, all of that's important. We teach that type of thing. But then really drilling into saying, okay, look, here's a tool that anyone can use. Any single person, again, can build a GPT. I now even hate to use the word build. Anyone can spin up a GPT in like 2 minutes. It takes a lot of iteration and effort after that to get it really right. But just giving them baseline education. Here's the tool. Here's access to it. Here's how to get some results out of it. Here's what I would start considering using it for. Keeping them focused on that, and it took way more time than you might want it to. Keeping them focused on that and that one single outcome, and then letting them experiment from there was key.
We're all adults, aren't we? At the end of the day, we're all professionals who
Yes.
are trusted with emails and work phones. And, yeah,
Right.
yeah. So last thing then, what's your number one piece of advice for leaders who are perhaps feeling overwhelmed by this challenge and how to tackle it?
Yeah, that's a good question because I also feel overwhelmed sometimes.
Well,
so you're not
you know
alone.
Yeah, exactly. When you were talking then, it made me think, if you think you're not keeping up with AI, everybody who uses AI tools says that.
So true. So true. So that would be the first piece of advice is understand you are not alone. You may not be where you want to be. You may very well need to spend more time or a little more urgency on it. Okay, that's fine. That's like we all struggle with that. So I would just say you're not alone on that. And also, I would really emphasize to people that as much as we do talk about urgency, the transformation we think is coming, we say all this stuff so that hopefully people act. But I would also just say, this does not have to be rocket science to start. Like, again, I keep coming back to the GPTs thing because it's just a good encapsulation of this. Whether it's GPTs or something else, focus in on these like 3 to 5 things that are causing you tons of stress, tons of time, like eat up tons of time, that get your results, that dictate your performance. Drill into those 3 to 5 things and hammer away at those with whatever model you want and whatever prompting strategies you want for as much time as you can afford, and then tune out the rest of the noise. That will get you really far.
Love it. I'm going to get you back on for some more discussions like this because you've obviously got a wealth of feedback from people out there and lots of great advice from the Institute. So
I'd love that.
That'd be ace. And you've said it on camera now, so you're definitely coming back.
Right. I get the strategy behind this.
If you've enjoyed this as much as I have, please leave us a comment. Ask any questions on the comments. We're enjoying seeing those starting to come in on Spotify now. And leave us a 5-star review if that's possible where you're listening. And most importantly, really help us if you hit the follow button, but make sure you don't miss future episodes as well, especially when Mike comes back. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Paul. I appreciate it.
Hey, did you enjoy this episode? Then be sure to leave us a comment, a review, and hit that follow button. See you next episode.